When I finished 2.5 story, I felt something that legitimately surprised me. Relief. Relief that I was done with Season 2. Relief that I would never have to see these characters in a long time. Relief that I was finally going to be out of Wi-Fi Peninsula. That relief is not something you want the player to feel. They should feel satisfied, hyped, emotional. Instead, I felt relieved that it was finally over. I hate 2.5 story. I hate Xiao'guang, and I hate Season 2. Okay, do I have your attention? Now, before we continue, I want to make something very clear. This video is not rage bait. I love Zenless Zone Zero. I love the combat, I loved the story, and this video is a good faith criticism from someone who actually cares, alright? I speak harshly about the things I'm very passionate about because I care. I'm going to be splitting this video into 3 parts. What Season 1 did right, Season 2's decline, and then 2.5 as the breaking point. The beginning of a story is a promise. It tells you what kind of story this is gonna be, the tone, the rules, what matters. It is a contract. Season 1 made promises and kept them. It established Zenless as this grounded urban world with an early 2000s aesthetic. Yes, it did have magic, but it felt like science in this world. There were hard rules, internal consistency. Nothing ever felt like it came out of nowhere or broke the world's logic. The characters felt real. They had lives outside of you, jobs, friends, goals that had nothing to do with the player. They weren't just NPCs waiting around for you to show up. They were people in the world that you were intersecting with. And the character designs were so good, visually distinct, memorable. They fit that urban aesthetic. Even characters that fit the urban design a little less, like Xiao'guang and Rina, felt like they belonged. A maid and butler service didn't feel out of place. Of course not. In this world, they established the corporatism and the wealth inequality so blatantly. Of course there would be some kind of service like Victoria Housekeeping to serve these rich clients. Everything just fit together. The story also had really good stakes that served the structure. You were a weak hacker in a chair, and your agents were strong but not at all godlike. The one exception was Miyabi. She's established as extraordinarily powerful, a void hunter, a prestigious title rewarded only to those who have performed incredible feats against the Holos. But here's the thing, you don't have access to her until 1.4. She starts almost antagonistic, trying to detain you. So, for all of 1.0 to 1.3, you're dealing with threats using just your ordinary agents, no cheat codes. And by the time Miyabi becomes an ally in 1.4, the stakes have naturally escalated. The antagonists know Miyabi's powerful and have planned for her. It feels earned. And after 1.4, the stakes and threats deflated considerably, yes. But Miyabi didn't just become your personal problem solver. She has a job. She has her own priorities. She's not always involved to make your problems disappear. So she was removed from the story, but it didn't feel unnatural or forced, like they were just trying to take a pawn out of the story so they could make fake stakes. Of course she wouldn't be in the story. Why would she be in Starloop Tower for Astra's concert, or helping Hugo with his revenge against Tops? She has a job at hand. And Belle and Wise, our protagonist characters, were done very well. They are not blank slate protagonists that you can self-insert into. They are characters, actual characters, each with their own wants and desires, their own unique personalities. Wise has a nice, even keel, dopey guy, reliable, almost maternal vibe to him. Belle, the younger one of the two, has a energetic gremlin vibe. Both were kind, yes. But they weren't above lying to their friends, trolling the Void Hunter, or even being just down horrendous for Astra. They had personalities and felt lived in within the world. You can pick either at the start of the game. They are proxies. a job title for people who operate outside of the law in the gray market of New Eridu. For the sake of this video, if you don't know much about Zenless, you can think of them as hackers who use advanced mathematics to help people navigate hollows. And hollows are these black hole things that are ever changing inside, like labyrinths filled with loot and beasts called ethereals, creatures that were once human. Now back to the main video. Not only were we proxies, but we were the legendary duo known online anonymously as Faithin. This could have been some generic, overpowered protagonist bullshit, but it's not. In fact, it serves the story. We're weak as hell, we can't fight. Our bodies can't even handle being in hollows for long. So instead, we are the man in the chair, using Eos, a bamboo, one of these cute little bean-shaped robots, that we can connect to using VR technology to lead the way for the real fighters. In this world that's really advanced tech, by the way, typically communication like this is next to impossible through a hollow, making us a very unique type of proxy. This isn't just to glaze the player character and make them seem cool or special. These traits are directly tied back into the greater conspiracy involving our teacher. We were students at the mysterious Helios Academy. Our teacher, Carol Arna, was blamed for the fall of the old capital, a tragedy that consumed old Eridu around 12 years ago, still a fresh scar in most characters' minds. The proxies utterly reject this verdict and will work in the shadows to prove her innocence. That is their goal. And then there's Sarah. At the start of 1.0, she's just an unassuming secretary, a background piece to Pearlman, the first real bad guy. But as the story unfolds, we learn that she was the one pulling the strings the whole time, using Pearlman as a puppet for something far darker. And she wasn't working alone. We get hints she's conspiring with someone over the phone, infiltrating a police building as a fake lawyer to get closer to her target. This isn't someone who stumbled into villainy. She's competent, she's careful, she's planning, she's making allies to get what she wants. Meanwhile, the story keeps dropping references to an upcoming election. We hear about it from Justin Bringer, a high-ranking police officer with a clear interest in winning it. But it's never forced, it's never spelled out to you like you're an idiot. The story just plants seeds and trusts that you'll notice. Then 1.4 happens and it all clicks. Threads that seem disconnected suddenly intersect into a greater conspiracy. It felt so satisfying to see the puzzles come together, tying Season 1 into a neat bow while raising questions for Season 2 to pick up. Get the introduction to the Exaltus, a doomsday cult that worships hollows and a being called the Creator. The Creator is revealed to have some kinds of a connection to our teacher as well, and her disappearance. Even Miyabi's power gets challenged, not through brute force, but through cunning. The villains understood how her blade worked, and tried to sabotage it. It felt earned because we'd seen what these people were capable of and we saw them at their planning phase. It was foreshadowed and it didn't feel like it came out of nowhere. Season 1 had consistent bangers. It kept its promises and upheld its part of the contract. It understood how to handle powerful characters. And Season 2 forgot all of this. It was announced that Season 2 would be in a Chinese setting. I'll fully admit I was a little scared. Zenless was my first ever gacha game, but based on the comments of people who are more experienced in the space, it sounded like Zenless would potentially lose its charm. The first image we saw of Wi-Fi certainly did not help. It was just a screenshot of, I believe, the entrance to Yonghui Summit, and it just looked like some dingy temple in the middle of bumfuck nowhere on the side of a mountain. And then 2.0 came out. I braced myself and I didn't hate it. In fact, it had a distinct Chinatown aesthetic. It managed to preserve that urban feel while evolving the idea in a way that felt like a natural progression, showing off different cultures within the city. I'll just give my own personal anecdote as well. As someone who lives in New York City, I felt like this was pretty fucking cool. In New York, it's normal to have different spots where different cultures concentrate, giving us pockets like Chinatown or Little Italy. It was really cool world building and made me excited for what different cultures textures and vibes of the city we could see in the future. I like the character designs a lot too. Minato, Yuzuha, all of Krampus. Such creative designs that fit the world like a glove. And I love Spook Shack and Krampus. Their dynamics feel so good and so naturally earned. Yuzuha starts her story openly antagonistic to Alice at the start, and over the course of a single chapter, we see Alice crying that Yuzuha is safe, and it actually feels earned. Dailin at the start of her story seems very ready to take Banyue down, but over the course of her story we see her self-doubt begin to creep in, and then at the end, she doesn't take his core. Instead, she offers him a second chance. And Banyue himself has a very interesting story of his own, a robot who is burdened by guilt for the people he couldn't save, the impossible choices he had to make, the guilt that haunts him, showing him as something far more than just a machine. And then we have Zhao, genuinely a morally grey character. And Monato's everything in 2.3 was incredible, it was cinema. It is still crazy to me that that guy's an A rank. And then Isolde in 2.2, she had such clear motivations, revenge for her former squad, betrayed by a general who took bribes. She had a twist that recontextualized everything before we knew she was a villain. She had an actual confrontation with Magus, a former comrade. Her arc had setup, escalation, and emotional payoff. The Season 2 story did so much well. And this new area was so cool. For about 6 weeks, we spent the entire season, nearly half a year, in this one region. In Season 1, we were mostly in urban core, yes, but we went to the Wild West area in Arizona for a patch, and then we come back, we have variety, movement, even within the urban core. There was so much diversity, a construction zone, a haunted skyscraper, Star Loop Tower, a moody port. Season 2 locks us into Wi-Fi Peninsula, the whole arc. From what I understand, this is Hoyo's standard formula. Each X.0 takes place in a different region inspired by a different real-life place for a whole season. So maybe in 2.0 we're in the Chinese region, then 3.0 we're in the Russian region, and then 4.0 we're in the Japanese region. You get the idea. I think this is kind of lame. We didn't do it for Season 1, so I don't know why we're doing it now. You know, living in New York, I visit Jackson Heights a lot. It's a neighborhood in New York where in one story you can get authentic Bangladeshi food, a block down you get Nepali food, you take a train to Flushing, you get Chinese food, go to Koreatown in Manhattan, or go to Greenpoint for polished bakeries, all within an hour. That's the kind of city I imagine New Eridu like, and it doesn't feel like that, especially in Season 2. If you want to make Wi-Fi Peninsula the main area, that's fine. But why the only area? You know, that doesn't make sense to me. But this is honestly not that big of an issue. It sucks, but it's just visual monotony. This is more of a symptom. The real problems with Season 2 were structural. Remember what I said about Season 1? Characters had roles, the proxy had a role. We were hackers, the man in the chair. We controlled EOS, and using it kept us safe, while letting us contribute to the team in ways no other proxy could. We had a clear weakness, a clear identity, a reason to exist within the narrative. 2.0 just throws that out. You know, some software update means you can just explore any hollow in person instead of needing to use EOS. No real explanation. And what do we gain? Nothing. Nothing at all. Everything we did as EOS we do now just in person. You know what does change? We're now a liability. We are squishy human and our agents have to go out of their way to physically shield us, in turn damaging themselves because, you know, you're acting as a fucking shield. And, you know, this is gonna become a genuine plot problem later, but I'll get to that. It needs its own section. We are never given a good explanation for why we do this at all. Like, it's literally like they just do it because they can. They have a perfectly good, safer alternative right there, but they just don't want to use it, and I don't get why at all. Belle and Wise in Season 2 are lobotomized versions of themselves. The Season 2 proxies could never have a scene like this with Miyabi.
Miss Hoshimi, there are sparks coming from your katana.
What?
Sorry, I lied. You don't look very unfazed.
That's not funny. And my response was normal.
Alright, Miss Hoshimi, there's foxfire on you!
Where?
Or remember in season 1 when Shuyuan felt genuinely angry and betrayed that the proxy lied to her? That scene worked because the proxy was the kind of person who would lie. Not maliciously, of course, but they were operating in the gray area and had to make judgment calls. That tension was interesting. Also, I realize I don't have this in my script, but there is so much to be said about our role as Faithin not meaning anything anymore. Like, we don't keep it a secret from anyone. Everyone and their mother knows that we are the top proxy Faithin. It is ridiculous. It is not a secret that we even bother hiding. There was this one line, I'm getting so off topic. This is supposed to be about how the proxies are lobotomized, but let me go on this mini tangent and then we'll go back to the proxies having no personality in season 2. There's this moment in season 2 where Alice says, "Oh, classic Faithin," out of nowhere. I don't think we ever told her that we were Faithin. She just knows. Also, what do you mean classic? It's so stupid. I hate how every single person knows that we're Faithin now. It used to be that there would be some tension. Like, oh my god, we need to keep our identity a secret, you know? And now it just doesn't fucking matter. But whatever. Back to what we were talking about. The proxy having no personality. Where was I? Talking about Shuyuan and how the proxy lied to Shuyuan and she felt genuinely angry and betrayed. And that was a very interesting moment that could never happen in season 1. Because season 2, the proxy doesn't do anything. Every single interesting edge of their personality has been sanded off. The snark, gone. The dorkiness, gone. The double life tension, barely referenced. What's left is a blank slate anime protagonist. Polite, nice, and listens real good. A total charisma vacuum. The proxy isn't even uniquely kind. Alice is kind, Monato is kind, Banyue is kind. They all share his basic decency, but they all bring an actual personality on top of it. They have goals, flaws, edges. The proxy, meanwhile, just agrees with people, enables them, is a yes man. They say the right supportive things at the right time. Every character who shows interest in him is doomed to talk to a wallpaper. The most basic nice guy responses. No pushback, no personality, no spark. Just a husk wearing the proxy's clothes. It feels like the writers wanted a self-insert protagonist, but forgot that season 1 already established that these characters are people. You can't have it both ways. Either commit to the personality you already wrote, or don't write one in the first place. This halfway lobotomy is the worst of both worlds. Also, this is just personal preference. I hate blank slate protagonists. I think they are pointless and useless and do not enhance and detract from the story in every single way, because every character is forced to bounce off a fucking wall, you know? And while we're talking about season 2's structural problems, let's talk about what happened to Sarah. You remember her? The master manipulator of season 1, the woman who puppeted Parliament, infiltrated police buildings, conspired in the shadows, while always staying 3 steps ahead. Well, I hope you didn't like her much, because in season 2 she becomes a joke. Her plans fail again and again. She repeats, it's going all according to plan, like a broken record while achieving basically nothing. That smart, cunning villain is dead, and she has been reduced to a generic antagonist who just says ominous things and then loses and leaves and disappears. It is so much more boring. There isn't any setup or grand payoff. This is just a character who is slowly drained of everything that made her interesting, and it will get far worse later, but we'll get to that. And here's something I've been dancing around that I need to say very directly. Season 2 does not have an overarching story. I want to be clear, and I've already stated this, the individual stories in Season 2 are pretty good. You know, they vary a bit, but in general, I think they're overall very good. Isolde's tragedy in 2.2? Great. Monato confronting his shadow self? Fantastic. Lucia saying goodbye to her father? Heartbreaking. Banyue earning his humanity? Very cool. All genuinely well-written character work. But none of it connects. Think about Season 1. Sarah was threading the conspiracy through everything in Chapter 1. The election was building in the background, the conspiracy around Helios Academy was tied into the proxy's identity, Miyabi's introduction raised the stakes while the antagonists planned around her, and then 1.4 happened, and every thread got pulled at the top. in the same moment. The puzzles clicked together. It felt like one story told across multiple characters. Season 2, it's just a collection of short stories that happen to share the same location. 2.0 is about Yi Xuan's trauma and the Exaltist's introduction. 2.1 is about Alice and Yuzuha and the corporate corruption. 2.2 is about Opal Squad and Isolde's revenge. 2.3 is about Minato, Lucia, and the drowned ideals. And 2.4 is about Banyue and Dailin and some Krampus stuff. There is no connective tissue here. You could be pedantic and say that, oh, the Exaltists are technically present every time, but that's not really connective tissue. They're just feels like monster of the week rather than an escalating threat or a coherent plan. Sarah's just doing things in the background, printing photos, harvesting memories, working with Senior Ye, but towards what? To what end? We're never shown how these pieces fit together. What about the Proxy? In Season 1, the mysterious Helios Academy and Carol Arna, our teacher, was always simmering. Every revelation felt like it mattered to us, personally. In Season 2, the Carol Arna photo didn't really add up to anything. It was just some picture of an illusion. The eye implants go completely unexplored. We're no closer to knowing what's up with our teacher either. We end the season with a new eye problem right back where we started. The mystery that supposedly drove us here took us nowhere. The Proxy isn't driving the story, they're just a tourist being shuffled between other people's arcs. Each individual chapter had its own setup and payoff. Isolde's betrayal is foreshadowed and lands. Banyue's guilt is established and resolved. But there's no macro structure, there's no overarching story, no sense that Chapter 1 is setting up Chapter 5, no feeling that we're building up towards something. That's why, to me, 2.5 feels so hollow as a finale, and 2.5 has its own section, so we're gonna get to that. But yeah, I don't like it. It's just trying to be a climax of a season-long arc that does not exist. 2.5 has its own Avengers Assemble moment, and it just falls flat because those characters were in their own disconnected stories. It was not building towards this. 1.4 also had an Avengers Assemble moment, and it hit really hard because everything, again, felt like it was connected. I feel like I'm a broken record, but I hope you understand what I'm getting at. Speaking of the individual stories, while I said I like most of them, there were some I hate. 2.5 is one of them. You probably get this by now. But let's talk about 2.0. First impressions are important, and let me tell you, Season 2 started off falling flat on its face. It was dog shit. Let's talk about Yi Xuan. I hate this character. Her fit, ass. Her character, dog shit. Her powers, bullshit. Her role, a walking deus ex machina that breaks the entire season. Okay, I'm really glad I got that out of my system. She has a lot of issues, but gun to my head, if you ask me to fix one thing about her in the entire story, it would be her role. When 2.0 starts, we move into Xueyuan Temple, Yi Xuan's home. She's our teacher now, recommended to us by the mayor himself, to help us harness our latent eye abilities from our days at Helios Academy. She isn't some one-off character who can be removed from the story in a patch. We live with her. We have direct access to her at all times. She's literally one door away, and she's a Void Hunter level agent. The story shows us this repeatedly. So why should we be scared of anything? You remember Miyabi? You don't get close to her till 1.4. She has a job, her own priorities. When she shows up, it's earned, and in the background, the threats have escalated enough to match her power level. Yi Xuan, day 1, you live with her. She's on speed dial. I'll give you an example. In 2.1, the miasmic fiend shows up. For a moment, it's scary. Spookshek is in over their head, and Yi Xuan appears. And then the problem's solved. I think the writers realized this was a problem, so you know what they did? For patches 2.3, 2.4, and 2.5, she is conveniently busy with something important. This is such a lazy way to remove her from the story. But hey, maybe it could have payoff. They keep hammering this over and over. She's doing something. Yi Xuan isn't here because she's doing something critical. She is the High Preceptor, a pillar of her community, and the story wants you to know this. Whatever she's doing, it matters. It has to matter. She's gone while people in her region are literally dying, while Wi-Fi Peninsula is in crisis, while things are falling apart. So this better be worth it. 2.5 reveals what she was doing. She was just helping the mayor in Hollow Zero. Really, I wish I had more to say, but that's literally all they tell us. We are given little to no details about whatever she was doing besides she was fighting something super powerful. And that's it. All of this build up to maybe set up something else in the future. She wasn't here doing her job for this. We know other Void Hunters exist. What were they doing? What was the point of any of this? This is when I realized Yi Xuan was not a character. She is a narrative tool that gets turned on and off. Need stakes? Turn her off. Need a power boost? Turn her back on. And because she can solve any problem when she's around, the story has to either remove her or manufacture enormous threats immediately. I'll give you an example. In the start of Season 2, we are thrown into a fight with the head of the Exaltists, a final boss tier enemy in the very first chapter of the season. Barely any build-up or natural escalation. They need to do this because they can't plop a weaker boss like the dead-end Butcher from Season 1. Yi Xuan would murk that thing in a heartbeat, so they're forced to do this, and that sucks. And it gets worse. At the end of that chapter, the head priest of the Exaltists brings Yi Xuan's sister back from the dead as an ethereal. That's crazy, man. I was honestly, as disappointed as I was with the chapter, I was honestly very excited when I first saw this. I was imagining what Yi Xuan's reaction would be like, her realization that this thing is her sister, gathering the courage to kill it and put it to rest. The potential emotional climax would have been incredible. Nope, no, none of that. No, Yi Xuan just kills her. The emotional reflection buried in flavor text in an enemy compendium. She's such a underwritten dog shit character. And it's not just her role in the story that's underwritten. Her powers are completely unexplained bullshit. Most Zenless characters can summon their elements in the story without explanation. That's fine. I don't need every single little detail. But Yi Xuan's abilities are the central focus of Season 2. She uses them to teach the Proxy new powers. They advance the story consistently. They are plot critical. Ether, the element she uses, has established properties. It is highly reactive to radio waves. That's how Astra, another character who manipulates Ether, does her things. That's why agents use drive discs. That's why music is such a consistent theme in Zenless, because they emit radio waves that help you control these things. They could have built on that, even a one-off line to do some science jargon so it makes sense. But they don't. We used to have these cool YouTube posts from the Zenless YouTube account that would explain agents' powers or their weapons and how they do what they do. They would do it for every new character that came out, and it was very interesting. It was like explaining the machinery and mechanics of our agents. And they stopped that in Season 1, probably because they couldn't explain Yi Xuan's fucking powers. Speaking of those new powers, Yi Xuan. She's supposed to teach us our new latent abilities. What abilities do we get? There's some useless powers for puzzles in the mini open worlds. Cool, I guess? But how do we get them? Often in stories, getting a new ability is symbolic of personal growth. Characters need to overcome something to achieve what they wanted. How do we get these powers? How do we train? What lessons does Yi Xuan impart upon us? Well, I'll tell you how. She tells us she's gonna train us in like a single dialogue box. The screen fades to black. White text tells us we were trained, and then the screen fades back in. And that's it. We have superpowers now. No gradual training arc or anything. Just in a few seconds, we have these new abilities. It is like the writers don't even take the rules of their world seriously anymore. And before anyone else says, oh, it's an urban fantasy, magic doesn't need explaining. Season 1 was also an urban fantasy. Ether has rules. Drive discs work on established principles. The shift from hard magic to Yi Xuan can do whatever the plot needs is not an evolution, it is laziness. Also, forgive me, but I need to rant about Yi Xuan's fit for a moment. I want someone to look me in the eye, actually look me in the fucking eye, and tell me that a high preceptor wearing vacuum-sealed booty shorts makes sense in any way. I'm no prude. I want to be clear, I love sexy characters. Jane, though, is in my opinion the best designed character in the game. Sexy designs and good designs are not mutually exclusive. Look at some of these fan designs. It's hot, it's sexy, it's also fitting for a martial arts master. It's not some over-designed, out-of-character bullshit. There's so much random shit on her, it does not make sense. Why is she wearing coins on her thigh? What is that bra thing? Like, what is that? And her jacket, what's with the zippers? Okay, deep breaths. Let's take a breather. You know, that felt very good to say. I know this isn't a design rant video, but I wanted to get that out of my system. Back to the story. I know I have been going very hard, but I want to be clear about something. I'm not here to bury Zenless. I have seen what this game can be. Season 1 proved it. Even Season 2, underneath all the problems I just listed, had moments of genuine brilliance. Krampus' affection, love him. The Wi-Fi aesthetic when it first dropped was genuinely exciting. Spookshake, pretty good. Here's where we are. Season 1 kept its promises, Season 2 broke them. Visually, structurally, with Yi Xuan as a walking embodiment of we do not know how to handle powerful characters anymore. And I thought that would be as bad as it ever got. And then 2.5 dropped. Let's rewind a bit. Shunguang is the wielder of the Qingming blade, a cursed blade that, when used, eats at your memories, then your 5 senses, and eventually your life force. She was mentioned by name in 2.1 by her brother, Shuyuan. Their names are very similar, so for clarity, I'm gonna just call the brother Senior Ye. For such an important character she ends up being, it is kind of weird that this is the most setup we get. Like, that to me is insane. We literally get no other setup for her. We get her mentioned by name once, and then she appears in 2.4 suddenly. From what little we are told that she's very powerful and picked up mystic arts very easily. We actually see her at the very end of 2.3, and she looks great. Character design wise, I like it. I'm not crazy about it, but it's certainly good, and it is way better than Yi Xuan's situation. The way her second form contrasts with Senior Ye's second form is also very good visual storytelling, with one representing Yin and the other representing Yang. Exactly what someone should expect from a character design, telling you a story within its visual design, you know? Her personality was also very fun. In 2.4, she comes off as this very excitable ball of sunshine who cares deeply about the ones around her. And at the very end, we get this heartbreaking scene that recontextualizes everything. Her claims that everything's fine, that the Qingming blade didn't actually have that much of an effect on her. It's all just a brave front. She's frantically writing everything down to remember, so she can pretend she hasn't forgotten a thing because she doesn't want to worry anyone. We had a very compelling character, a good personality, and a great design. So what the hell happened? Before we continue, I already gave this warning, but I'm gonna give it again. I'm about to be very harsh. If Xuan is your waifu and you don't want to hear me insult her, maybe click off or skip ahead. In 2.5, it took 2 of the worst character tropes in history and rolled them into one character. The Mary Sue, a character who is treated as perfect and flawless, and the damsel who is head over heels for the main character. Now, I called her a Mary Sue, so to be very clear, the definition online is a type of character who is depicted as unrealistically lacking flaws or weaknesses. I think this is a weak definition, so let me be more clear. A Mary Sue is not defined by literally being flawless, but by how the narrative treats the character. Xuan has many flaws. She's naive, she's impatient, she's selfish in a specific way I'll get to. But the story never actually treats these as flaws. The narrative doesn't challenge them. Other characters don't meaningfully call them out. There are no real consequences. The story frames her as fundamentally right, even when she's being contradictory or unfair. That's what makes her a Mary Sue, not the absence of flaws necessarily, but the absence of narrative accountability. The main personal conflict is Xuan wanting to do what she wants despite the dangers of her sword. Characters consistently tell her to not use the blade. The story paints them as inconsiderate, like they're wrong for wanting to protect her from a weapon that will literally kill her. Here's the thing, I'm not using selfish as an insult. Her wanting to selfishly take agency over her life even while ignoring the wants of others, is actually a very cool idea for a character, and is not a bad thing in my opinion. You should be able to take agency for what you want to do with your life. There's something compelling about someone who refuses to be protected, who demands the right to sacrifice themselves on their own terms. But that only works if the story acknowledges the complexity. Hugo is a character I love. In his story, he goes after his uncle in tops, and admits there's no real grand reason to it. Something good coming out of it is a nice convenience, but he fully admits he just wants revenge. The story lets things get complicated. Xiao'guang, on the other hand, is just treated as a hero that is always doing what's right despite her selfishness, rather than because of a complicated choice she's making. If the plot wanted to acknowledge that tension, that would be really interesting. Instead, we just have the proxy glazing her and enabling her. You know what? You do what you want. You're safe to be damned. That's basically what the proxy says to her, over and over again. I felt like I was going crazy. Everyone else was to a certain extent right, both on an emotional and utilitarian level. Obviously, you don't want to see someone you love kill themselves. Obviously. If she feels helpless or useless because she can't contribute due to the cursed effect of her blade, that's understandable. That's worth exploring. But it is very selfish to act on that desire without acknowledging the cost. On a utilitarian level, her life force is a resource that gets spent when she uses her sword. It's completely understandable that people would suggest she stays put and preserves her energy for when it's really needed. Like imagine, for those of you who have played the 2.5 story, imagine where at the midpoint, imagine if Senior Ye wasn't able to reverse the effects of the Qingming blade. Just imagine it. She'd be in a coma for the final showdown, and we'd have to deal with the final boss, all because Ye Shunguang wanted to go outside and use her powers. And for what exactly? When we take her inside the hollows, she's not exactly doing anything that other people in Yongkuai Summit can't do. She uses her sword powers to chop down cursed flowers. Why? Maybe I missed something, but the idea that you need to use the Qingming blade to take down these cursed flowers is absurd, and if it truly was necessary, the story did a dog shit job of communicating that. And you know what's the worst part? There are no real consequences. The central conflict, the curse of the Qingming blade slowly killing Ye Shunguang, gets resolved in under 20 minutes. No sacrifice, no lasting cost. Senior Ye just says, oh, you know, I discovered something that can fix this. The proxy is the only one that can do it, because of course he is. Because he has a pure of heart. What does that even mean, by the way? And suddenly everything's fine. Also, I don't really buy that the proxy has a pure of heart. Like, there's no shot. It's a different cover. Also, like, what does having a pure of heart have to do with ether or, like, data or, like the science? Trying to fit some kind of scientific explanation into that is just, like, impossible, man. Like, what the fuck is that, man? What the fuck is it? All those speeches about courage and hope and choosing to fight despite the consequences, they ring completely hollow when the resolution costs nothing. Stakes without consequences are not stakes, they are theater. The whole time, she's acting like a naive child who wants to go outside and is unhappy that her parents are telling her that it's unsafe in the dark. Not like someone who understands sacrifice. Also, speaking of the proxy, remember earlier when I said because they insist on going in the hollows, despite that being unnecessary, other agents need to use their bodies as shields? Well, this is at its worst in 2.5. For some reason, the proxy is traveling alone in a hollow. They were originally in a group with 2 other people who can fight, but they decided to wander off on their own. The others, I guess, are lagging behind or something. And then, they're about to be attacked. And the proxy is still this squishy being, they can't do shit. And because of this, Ye Shunguang, who probably sees this off screen, needs to suddenly activate her sword powers to their fullest ability to rush in and save the proxy to kill this ethereal. And because of this, the side effects hit her hard. She begins to lose her 5 senses. The proxy is understandably torn up about this. They keep saying, this is all my fault. And you know what? This might be the smartest thing the proxy has said all season. Because they're right. It is their fault. Because they chose to enter the hollow instead of using EOS, Ye Shunguang might die. But don't worry, Other characters are here to minimize the situation. Tell you things like Xuan would have done some stupid shit anyways and lost her 5 senses that way. You would think there would be some kind of self-reflection. A realization of their overconfidence, putting the ones they love in danger over and over again. But no, nothing happens. And while we're on the topic of the proxy, let's continue. Those superpowers I mentioned earlier, how you fade to black and see white text and that's how we get our superpowers and how bullshit that is? What if somehow they managed to get even lazier? In 2.5, the proxy gets the ability to reverse objects into their old state. They do something similar with Vivian when their emotions are very high and unstable. If they could get control over this ability, that would be incredible. And scientifically, maybe it could tie into the movement of data and how data interacts with hollows and ether. You already know, that's not what happens. They just say, okay, let me try this thing I've never done before, never trained for, and that's it, we just have the power now. That's what we're doing now. Unlocking and mastering powers when the plot needs it. And speaking of plot and logic not making any fucking sense, let's go back to when we reversed the effects of the Qingming blade because we had a pure of heart. I complained a little bit how stupid that was, but I didn't go into the details. So let me tell you how we do it. We enter her mind somehow, and through the power of magic and love, we save her. Is this explained? You already know the answer. Dialogue either repeats things we already know or could easily infer, like it's written for the dumbest person ever. And then when it comes to things you would actually want explanations on, nothing. Pacing manages to feel both rushed and dragged out simultaneously. There's too much melodramatic monologuing. Characters stopping the action to talk about their feelings and then doing it again 5 minutes later. The same emotional beats get repeated over and over again instead of actually building on themselves. It's like the story doesn't trust you to feel things unless the character explicitly tells you how to feel multiple times in a row. And now let's talk about a different issue, the constant glazing. In the first half of the 2.5 story, it doesn't even feel like a story. It feels like an advertisement, and Xiao'guang is the product. I was being taken out of the story over and over again because the game wanted to remind me that this is a software meant to transfer money from my wallet to Hoyoverse headquarters. It was like a corporate mandated dating sim segment that bashes into your head over and over again that Xiao'guang likes you. They even do the most corny ass pull ever, where they retroactively change the story to reveal that the proxy and Xiao'guang met as kids. And I say change because there is no way this was originally part of the plot. It's never foreshadowed, it's never mentioned, it's nothing. There is nothing about this. And we just remember the memory when it is convenient. And conveniently we forgot, I guess, too. It is so stupid. Such an insultingly corny trope to ham-fist into the story. Why was this never mentioned that the proxy went to Wi-Fi Peninsula before? That's important information. Was it a family trip with Carolina? Why don't we know this? Why is nothing here familiar to them? Also, dude, if I hear Osmanthus cake one more time, I'm gonna fucking lose it. The constant glazing could be fine if it was earned, but it never is. If these compliments were references to our genuine accomplishments, things we did, who we actually were, that would be one thing. But Xiao'guang just tells me I'm good at literally anything I touch. That's not... so it just feels kind of fucking hollow. I'm not just burying her because she's a waifu character. You know, you can do that well. Vivian exists. Vivian has her own motives, her own story. Her arc isn't just about the proxy. She has goals, struggles. She is existing, independent of you. When she interacts with the proxy, it feels like two actual people connecting, not a product marketing itself to you. She feels like a real person who happens to like you, not a love interest who exists just to like you. We also know exactly why she feels the way she does. You know, it doesn't come out of nowhere. Xiao'guang's relationship, meanwhile, jumps from acquaintances to soulmates in what feels like 15 minutes of screen time. The writers aren't showing us natural progression, they're telling us she loves you and are expecting you to feel the same way. And honestly, a lot of these problems could have been avoided if they just introduced her earlier in the Season 2 cycle. Like, letting the relationship actually breathe. Let us spend time with her before the story demands that we care about her. Let the romance build up if they insist on having one. Room to naturally grow instead of speedrunning it within a patch. But they didn't, and now here we are. If you like Yi Xuan, I imagine this story was like crack to you. But to me, every time she came up, I just wanted her to leave me alone. At the end of the story, Senior Ye says something that is genuinely beautiful. He's talking about his sister and says, I once arrogantly believed her kindness was mere innocence, the naivete of someone who lived sheltered from the world. I was wrong. That wasn't naivete, but the courage to see through the darkness, yet still choose to embrace the light. That is such a beautiful idea for a character. Someone who combines wisdom and chooses optimism despite understanding the darkness. Unfortunately, that is not the character we got. We got someone who is actually just that naive. It's the story telling us one thing and showing us another. And finally, my friends, this is a eulogy for Sarah and what they did to our character. The main antagonist since Season 1, Chapter 1. Man, you really hate to see her go like this. I mentioned earlier how she'd been reduced to a joke in Season 2. Plans failing repeatedly, becoming a generic villain who says it's going all according to plan, while achieving nothing. I kept hoping the finale would redeem her. A final villain speech, why she was doing what she was. Something. Instead, she gets sidelined by a fucking bang-boo in her own finale. She has one line in all of 2.5, in all of the finale story, and it wasn't even a cool one-liner. Like, you put a gun to my head, I could not remember what she said. It is... like, I think it might actually just be a groan or something. Like, it is a throwaway line. We never see her proudly postulate. We never hear her final villain speech. We never hear how it all came together. Also, she's a fucking ethereal now. She just metamorphized into an ethereal, out of nowhere. Like, there was zero foreshadowing or setup. You're probably surprised to hear this. Like, wasn't she human? Yeah, she's just an ethereal next time we see her. No foreshadowing, no setup, no, oh, I'm going to go into a cocoon in the last chapter and be a monster now. None of that. We just see her and she's... I am struggling to put into words how abrupt and sudden it is that she's just a monster now. Like, it is insane. She just comes out of a sphere and she's a monster and that's it. And then we kill her. And then that's the end of the story. Like, genuinely, I'm at a loss for words. I don't need to use any big words like narrative and foreshadowing and literary analysis to explain for you to see why this feels bad and is unsatisfying, right? Like, who is this, man? This isn't Sarah. This isn't the Sarah I know. Is this a double? Like, what the hell is happening? Also, I just want to go over some common defenses I've seen for 2.5 and Season 2. And I think you can roll them all up into a video by a very talented YouTuber by the name of Dingle Bob. It's a very funny name. Dingle Bob is a YouTuber who makes very thoughtful Zenless lore videos. And I want to be very clear, I like the guy. I love his videos. However, his most recent video is something I very strongly disagree with. For lack of a nicer word, it feels very pretentious. Now, to be clear, I think Dingle Bob is very smart. I just respectfully disagree with this video. I very strongly dislike the idea like, oh, you just don't understand the themes, or the subtext is really deep if you just pay attention, or it's about grief, duties. Like, his argument is basically that people just didn't pay attention to the 2.5 story, and that many of them are just missing the subtext and the symbolism and the deeper points. Now, to his credit, he does acknowledge that there are some actual issues with the 2.5 story. He's not just straight up glazing, but his defense for the contents of the story is something I still very strongly disagree with, and I'll explain why. I know what they were going for, and after seeing Dingle Bob's video, it's even more clear to me. But I just don't care. Here's the thing, execution matters a lot more than concept. Having deep themes does not make your story good. Complexity without clarity is just noise. A story is a vehicle for communication. If the vehicle has square wheels and the engine is broken, it does not matter how precious the cargo is. It never reaches the destination. Subtext should be felt, not solved. In the best stories, the themes resonate emotionally even if you can't articulate why. If I have to logically deconstruct a scene to find out why I'm supposed to be sad, the writers failed. If I need to read a wiki or watch an analysis video to feel anything, that's not depth, that's homework. And when people defend bad writing by pointing out to hidden philosophy, that's not praising the story, they're praising the idea of a story. They're rewarding the writer for having a concept, rather than rewarding them for executing it. The worst part of this defense is that it shifts the blame from the creator to the audience. It suggests enjoyment is only reserved for those who are smart enough to look past the problems. The best writers include massive amounts of philosophical subtext, while making the surface level story work for a general audience. The best themes enhance a functional story. They do not excuse a broken one. I saw someone put it perfectly. It is important for things to be actually good, not good actually. You know what's the worst part? I know the writers still got that dog in them. One is this brief moment acknowledging people in cults as victims, because that's how the real world works. As long as society leaves people behind, they'll be desperate, they'll be searching for answers. If a predatory cult is the one to grab their hands and pull them out of the ocean, giving them comfort and purpose, of course they will be loyal. Getting rid of the exaltists won't do shit. As long as these societal problems exist, there will be people who prey on the least fortunate. It is a very empathetic take, and it shows us that these writers are smart and can communicate ideas clearly to a general audience. Another example, Senior Ye. He was the best part of this patch. He had a genuine internal conflict, wanting to save his sister versus everything else, and he was willing to do anything. His pain and hatred was palpable. He was incredibly emotional, even irrational at times, single-minded. Every scene with him was a delight, and the story never painted him as totally perfect. It let his ugly, raw moments just be. The reveal that Shunguang was basically groomed by the Yunhui Summit elites into inheriting the Cursed Blade was such an interesting twist. I do wish that Yi Xuan got more criticism for that. Like, she is a fucking fraud at this point. She's the leader. She has a responsibility to be on top of the people who are working under her, and she failed at it. I wish Senior Ye said something about that instead of yelling, "Is all you think about your sister?" Especially because he does exactly that. But whatever, he was emotional, you know, I can let that pass. So it had good moments, so I don't know how 2.5 ended up so dog shit. And you know what really twists the knife? The events that came alongside 2.5, these optional story events, they were really fucking good, man. There was an event focusing on Xiao'guang and Senior Ye, and it explores their dynamics with actual depth. The pain between them is given room to breathe. Xiao'guang reflects, she grows, she feels like a person instead of a cardboard cutout the story keeps propping up. The lore about the Cursed Blade is finally explained. And look, I'm not completely satisfied with it, but it is miles better than zero explanation. And then there's this other multiplayer event. It's a multiplayer event. How much lore could it have? How much story could it have? A lot, apparently. It does lore and story setup in a way that actually engages the player. It explains things you'd naturally be curious about. It sets up future threads in a way that feels consistent with the world. It doesn't just lore dump, it feels like storytelling. And that is so frustrating, man. The writers can do this. They proved it in Season 1. They're proving it with these side events. The talent is there. The understanding on what makes a story work is there. So why wasn't this in the main story, man? The content that actually matters. The stuff everyone plays, that it's supposed to carry the season. Why does it feel like it got the B team treatment, while these side events are optional and not permanent get the A team? It's baffling to me, man. Like, honestly, so much of this should have been in the main story. It just makes the main story's failures stink even more. I started this video talking about promises. Season 1 made them and kept them. Season 2 broke them one compromise at a time until we got here. To Yi Xuan, then to Shunguang, to whatever the hell they did with Sarah. I love this game, but I'm not stupid. I'm not gonna defend dog shit writing. the bones are still there for a potentially really good story. I just hope that the Zenless team remembers that those bones are worth building on. Yo, so this is me from the future. I was thinking, right, so I'll give some backstory. I started this video out because I had a lot of feelings about the story, and I think personally sowing on these very angry feelings and not doing much with them isn't very healthy, so I decided to put something out into the world, you know? Use it as fuel to make something, and as an outlet basically for my anger with the story. And while I was making this video, I kept thinking, you know, what if they did this? What if I was writing instead? I had a lot of thoughts like that, and now I have this whole bunch of new emotions which I don't have an outlet for, because, you know, this video is done for. And then I was thinking, you know, what if I made a video that was a rewrite of season 2? And yeah, that's basically what I'm asking is, do you all want to see something like that? I was also thinking, this is a crazy thing to think, but I was thinking, you know, I'm a game developer. What if I made I don't know, a fan game, maybe like a spiritual rewrite, which has different characters or something, but they're the same characters, you know what I mean? But I don't know, those are just some ideas I'm putting out there into the void. If you people want to see something like that, please, by all means, let me know.